controversy surrounding the Barbie movie, but according to The Guardian, the country of Lebanon has made a motion to ban the movie because they believe the movie, quote, promotes homosexuality, unquote, according to Muhammad Mortada, Lebanon's cultural minister. While in the U.S., we have a couple of unhinged people setting dolls on fire, having a branch of government dedicated to evaluating entertainment media shows a more obvious problem. So suppression of culture, art, creativity, and expression is a huge overreach, especially when it's coming from a federal level like that. So religious oppression is, of course, alive and well in Lebanon. And if you don't see a problem here, then, hey, you can call us because the show is starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan, and when I'm not flubbing intros, this is the call-in show that happens live every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. We talk to people about what they believe and why. So if you'd like to call us, you can do that. The number is 512-991-9242, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Of course, Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And we'd like to also welcome our new viewers watching today on Twitter and Twitch. Yes, still calling it Twitter. And yes, I'm still going to say I'm calling it Twitter for at least another week or two, as well as give our love to our viewers, of course, watching on YouTube. Of course, every single week, we always try to have a special guest, and this week is no different. Returning, guesting with me for the first time, but returning nonetheless is Brady Hardin. Brady Hardin, welcome back to Truth Wanted.
Thank you very much. And you know what? I'll tell you what promotes homosexuality in Lebanon is how good looking a lot of the men in Lebanon are.
The funny thing is, I haven't seen the Barbie movie, but as far as I know, there's no, like, I don't even think homosexuality is a topic of interest in the movie, right? Have you seen it?
I've not seen it yet, but I think the Ken's best friend, Alan, is very intentionally queer-coded.
Queer-coded? Okay.
And was back in the day, too. Like, the original doll was very queer-coded. So
okay, I
think that's maybe what it's going off of.
Yeah, I at least I heard there wasn't any display open acts of, you know, two men kissing or, you know, anything too egregious. I don't know. That's what I heard. But I haven't seen the Barbie movie. I don't know.
Did you have any Barbies or Kens growing up?
You know, can't say I did. Don't think so.
I did have a Ken. He was a scuba diving Ken.
Really? Ooh.
Kind of.
So cool. Are you saying is there a connection here, Brady? Is that where, you know?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Doors for you?
Because, like, I mean, I'm gay. Hello. And I was brought up very evangelical, so I didn't have access to that part of my life until after I left. But I don't know. I think I definitely had a few things as a kid that I look back at and I'm like, oh, okay. Queer Brady is seeping out. You know?
I have a friend who obviously, like, you know, he doesn't literally think that this piece of media turned them gay, but he jokes and says that Kingdom Hearts is the reason why he's gay. And I just think that's really funny because without even specifying which part of Kingdom Hearts, it could be anything.
Goofy. He just really is.
Yeah, probably Goofy and Donald for sure. But folks, every single week on this show, we are asking you a question or a prompt. It's our We Want the Truth segment. So before we go any further, let's go ahead and dive into what our prompt was last week. Last week's prompt was, we know crystals can't heal, but their little known actual power is blank. So that was the prompt. And we have our top 3 answers for you today. So number 3's answer is coming from Brandt-WI, who says crystals can cause orgasms depending on their shape, which is, I mean, it's not wrong. It's not wrong,
shape
right?
And how you use it.
Yeah, for sure. That's a power of crystals that I didn't think about. So great answer there, Brandt-WI. Number 2 answer is coming from Phil Armstrong, who says, crystals can make you very, very rich if you know an ex-chem teacher calling himself Heisenberg, which, you know, is, of course, a Breaking Bad reference if you haven't seen the show. But yeah, that is another use for crystals, funnily enough. Very fun stuff. Our number 1 comment comes from Mark McGee, who says, The little known power of crystals is that they are often taken for granted, which is just, it's too good. It was too good of a pun not to include in our comments for this week. It's very good. Thank you, Mark, for putting that comment there. And of course, thank you to everybody for contributing. If you made a comment but you didn't get it read out this week, that's okay, because we have
funnier
another
next time.
Yeah. Yeah, listen to Brady, be funnier next time. But also, we have another prompt for you, so you can try again next week. And this week's prompt is, what is something that is overpriced but people pay for it anyway? Which is, like, honestly, for this show, probably the most generic prompt we've given so far. But I still think it has the capacity for some very interesting answers. So anyway, what is something, Brady, do you know anything? What's something that is overpriced but people pay for it anyway? This is like a whose line is it anyway kind of prompt. You know, I mean,
car insurance, because I haven't gotten a wreck in so long, and I'm thinking about how much money is going towards that, and that really that bothers me.
Yeah, you know what I think about? It's just all the the whole point of streaming services was the point that, oh, like, cable's expensive and you can just pay a little bit a month. But then now it's like, wow, I pay for so many services, I might as well have been paying for cable. It's like everything's on these different shows. So that's fun. But yeah, anyway, I think, though, our commenters can give more creative answers. So I want to hear what you guys have to say. Please leave a comment, and we'll read out the top 3 answers next week. And now it's time to talk to you, Brady. Brady, I'm glad that you got to be back on. You sent me a really great message. I would say great message. It was a heartfelt message talking about some experiences that have been going on in your life recently, some of which I was privileged to know about because we actually got to hang out in person for the first time a little while ago.
Wild.
Yeah, that was really fun. We were at the Secular Student Alliance conference this summer together. We were on a podcasting panel. It was really great. And you kind of let me know about kind of what was going on. And at the time, you couldn't be super public about the situation. And now that kind of the dust has settled a little bit on it, you can kind of talk about it more. And you expressed that you wanted to talk about this on the show, which I was very flattered that you wanted to. You thought that my platform was a good place to talk about it. And I agreed. I said, yes, this is a thing that I think we should definitely talk about. So let's talk about it. Brady, you have a podcast. And you weren't able to do that podcast for a while because of this particular reason. You want to just like start from the beginning here? Like what's been going on?
Yeah. So the annoying thing about my life is that you kind of have to hear about the Silmarillion before you can get into Fellowship of the Rings.
Yeah, sure.
So sure. I came from a very religious background, a very Southern Baptist, but it was like my faith, and I really believed it, and realized that I was queer, but I repressed it. And then over the years, I was able to be open about my sexuality, but saying that I wasn't going to act on it because of the faith. So I got my Bible degree. I met a woman that I was attracted to. We got married. We had a kid. Found out that she was talking to somebody else. We ended up getting a divorce. Went through a huge church abuse, everything. But here's where it gets good. After all of that, I ended up questioning the faith and ended up leaving, but also my ex-wife did as well. And she was able to get some deconstruction and therapy and realized she's queer as well. And she came out, got married, and now we all just kind of co-parent our kid together and as each other's friends. We're each other's chosen family now. And it's been amazing to build this new friendship on the other side of our religious deconstruction. And over the years, I've been able to have a podcast and be more vocal about my experience and just what it was like being queer and having to repress my sexuality, and what was it like to question all of my beliefs and literally lose all of my friends and relationship with family. And then recently we've hit into this issue started over COVID, of we had parents or family members that were not believing in the vax for a while, that didn't social distance. When we asked if we could social distance, I was told no. And they wanted to see our son, and we're like, no, we need to set some boundaries. We need to ask some questions. And when we start getting questions or ask questions, then it would be this pushback, and it would just be this runaround thing. And then my ex-wife would go and see family that were vaxxed and were masking and they're going through safety protocols. But then I had family members that were like, well, why do they get to? Why do they? And it's like, no, this isn't your place. Like, out, done. So we had to set boundaries, and we wanted a 6-month break. And I even said at the end of this 6 months, we will have mediation. We can work through this, but it's too much for us to handle right now. And we don't need to, like, have to jump through all these hoops. And at the end of the 6 months, instead, we were met with a lawsuit from my mom that she got a lawyers, and that they are suing us using some Missouri law, grandparents law, which every state has like a grandparents law, but they differ from state to state. And in Missouri, it is if you are a grandparent and you're kept away from your kid for over 6 months, or grandkid for over 6 months, and the parents are divorced, then you can sue and basically force your family into thousands and thousands and thousands of legal debt, thousands of dollars of legal debt. And it's either we have to give up the case and let them do what they want, or we have to pay all this money and fight for our rights as parents. Because both my ex-wife and I are like, no, we've seen the issues. We see the communication breakdown, where the distrust is, the dishonesty. So no, we don't want you around our kid. And for her to then take this legal thing and try to make it out that all of this is because she's a Christian and we just don't like Christians. and so it turned it into like this martyrdom thing.
Right. And so because of that, because you do a podcast where you talk about Christian issues, but amongst other things, you felt it was in your best interest to kind of stop doing the show for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that anything that I said or did was going to be used against me in a court of law, if I can quote Law and Order for a moment. But and it was like she had described the podcast as, quote, crushing and killing Christian people, and making it out to be this thing that it's not. I mean, we interview people about their experiences, and if you could let me know how I can crush and kill somebody with my words, just my bare syllables, I ripped them apart, they're like a Colosseum lion. But it was just absurd. And so it just, everything gets twisted and turned. And because we're a red state, we've got a Josh Hawley appointed judge. Like, it's just not to get into politics, sorry, but just it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, so on this note, right? So what is the current status of the legal situation now? Is everything kind of settled, or is it still ongoing, or what's going on there?
We had the court date, and now we're just in this months and months long process of waiting for the decision. We had to drop another, I think it was less than $1,000, but several thousand or several $100 to get like the transcript so that our lawyer can read it and then write up the response and all of this. So we're just now waiting for this response, and it's just been months now.
Yeah. And this is, speaking on a personal note here, as someone who has met you in real life and has met your son. Your son is a wonderful human being.
Thank you.
You've obviously done a great job in raising him. And I haven't met your ex-wife, but
She's badass.
The fact that he's as well adjusted as he is tells me that there is something that's been going on between the two of you in raising him, which was just fantastic. I've worked with kids in the past who comes from all kinds of various backgrounds. And let me tell you, it's the sexuality of the parents is the least thing that contributes to the kids' upbringing. But it seems to be that at least this family member has taken that part of your life against you, and also taken your lack of religious belief as using that against you to take away your son, which is it's awful. It's terrible.
Luckily, it's not that she could take him away from us. It's more of whether she's going to get court appointed. Visitate. You know what I mean? So
visitation to
but it's still just the principle of here are two parents that are can make the right decisions, are making the right decisions. We had to fork over several $100s worth for a guardian ad litem, which is like a third-party lawyer who represents the kid. And so she came in and like investigated the whole situation, interviewed us, my mom, my ex-wife, and even our kid without letting him know what was going on, because we're shielding him from that. He still doesn't understand or doesn't know about the court stuff. But and she investigated the whole thing, and she's like, no, absolutely, these parents know what they're doing, and has like taken a very strong stance alongside of us, which has been reassuring, because everybody has those points in their life where they may not see their own themselves objectively, like with objectivity.
Sure.
If I could use your name. So if I could pronounce it right. So, we want to have those safeguards, but it's like, here's me and an ex-wife on the same page, my ex-wife's partner, same page, and now this third-party lawyer, same page. And it's like, no, we know what we're doing, and I need to trust my intuition of how incredibly messed up it is. Because from our understanding, the law hasn't been used in this way for like two parents who are on the same page. Like all of this stuff, like it hasn't been used this way. And it really makes me question, is this because we're queer? Is this because of the religious whatever? Is there some sort of special thing about us that we're having to go through this in a way that others are not? And it just seems really messed up. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's always an attempt to remove power from queer parents. And here you are, two sets that both have proven they're great, and to take the authority away from us and our kid is allowed to be around, etc.
It's awful. It's awful. I mean, we hear about these kinds of cases, right, of queer parents being denied access to adoption rights for kids. I mean, like, that's kind of been a thing that's been happening for years and years and years. But this is almost, and again, it's not taking away your kid, right? It is visitation rights. But as far as you're concerned, like, it's your kid to take care of, right? The only reason why they would have any special privileges at this point is by blood, because you've made an active decision not to have this person in your life, because they've demonstrated that they haven't been responsible in that position, right? In the position that they should be as a family member. And in my view, I just think it might as well be taking away your kid, because they're giving, this is like the government saying, well, like, okay, now you have to let this person hear this other person's point of view and let them hear about whatever they want to say about what's going on, because they're related by blood. And unfortunately, there are families that just aren't great. Right. There's just family members that aren't going to get along and aren't going to see things the same way. And you use the words before, chosen family, right? Obviously very popular amongst the queer community, but also I think should be popular amongst secular communities in general, since many of us go through similar kinds of separation, where it's like, our chosen family are sometimes the ones that we feel the most connected and can work the best with in our lives, because they recognize and understand us for who we are, and let us live that honestly. And I'm so sorry that you've been having to go through this, this whole legal ordeal, because someone isn't letting you guys raise your kid the way you want to. Because again, quite frankly, your kid is more well-adjusted than most kids I've seen his age. He's fine. He's great.
Than I am. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but it's a whole thing, Brady. But I'm really glad you've gotten to share some of this. So like, now that you're kind of on, or kind of been going through this, do you have plans to kind of start the podcast again and get that going?
So I had 3 episodes that I had recorded already, and now I'm going through and editing those old episodes and then releasing them. And I wanted to, once the things get settled down, especially too, because a lot of this is like having to fundraise for like the GoFundMe and stuff, because I'm just at a single dad. I don't have those sort of resources right now. And I just got laid off right as all this was happening. No fault of my own, but like a whole bunch of people got laid off in the company. They had a bunch of budget cuts after being bought out a year ago, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just like, God, this timing is horrible. So I'm kind of using a couple of episodes to help fundraise a little bit. And then I want to come back and record some new episodes. There's some new creators like in the deconstruction space that I've been really impressed by, and I want to like kind of reach out to and get to know more. And also just there's also a few people that I know who have gone through. It's getting so much more attention now, but like a lot of like the sexual abuse within churches and how complex some of those cover-ups can be. And so I've got some friends that I'm close to. They're like, hey, I've got some older school experiences that I think would be helpful for people to hear and learn from. So kind of getting those sort of episodes out, I think would be important. And from there, I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I'm really looking forward to doing an episode where all of this legal stuff is just taken care of, and I can just be like, hey, this is over, we're done. And here's some of the ways that you can protect yourself from this sort of thing happening to you or whatever.
Yeah, and I should mention too, your I don't think we even said the name. Your podcast is the
Life After. The Life After, yeah.
Life, yes, I said Life After. I said that. I got you.
Oh no, I wasn't correcting you. I was just repeating.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, Life After. You guys should definitely check it out if you like this show where we like especially like the interview segments of this show. I mean, that's Brady's bread and butter. You know, and that's why it's also very funny to me where your family member is talking about how you just tear people down when really most of your show is just talking about experiences, and that's I think what makes good podcasts is that kind of storytelling, that kind of talking about your feelings and experiences in a way that can be accessible to everyone, and it's super important. So I really hope you get the chance to get that stuff started again. I'll definitely be rooting for you. But yeah, Thank Life you. After we'll put plugs to that at the end of the show, of course, and as always. Whenever Brady wants to come back on, we'll probably talk about it again too. But yeah, I'm really excited that you've been able to talk about this now. Because when you first told me about that a few months ago, gosh, it just sounded so heavy. And I don't know. I hope you're feeling like you're in a better place than you were.
I'm getting there. It takes. One of my biggest role models in life, though fictional, is 7 of 9 from Star Trek. And one of her big things is I will adapt. And it just takes time to do that. And it just is frustrating that my deconstruction and coming out and everything, which was like 10 years ago, was so traumatic.
Yeah.
Like I had a best friend who just passed away. I was going through my divorce. I had homophobic family members, including my mom, who were like, oh, you shouldn't have your son anymore because if you're gay, then you're going to molest or whatever.
Yeah.
And having to go through all of that, like that back then was so hard. And it took me so many years to get my feet back on the ground. And now that I feel like I finally was, and then it gets like knocked over again. And it's just frustrating,
yeah, obviously.
But
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, honest. I mean, like, I'm sure most of you folks at home, actually, if you have experiences like this, if you have family members or friends that have treated you in a way like this, please call in. This is actually a great time to talk about that. I would be very interested to know other people's perspectives, because I know Brady can't possibly be alone in this. However, it is kind of a wild situation, as you mentioned. The fact that the law, as you understand it in your state, is being used in a way that is unprecedented in the state. So I guess discrimination can come in a lot of different forms, unfortunately. And in my opinion, it seems to be a case of that. But regardless, again, this is Truth Wanted. This is a call-in show. We're going to get to some calls here in just a second. Again, numbers 512-991-9242 or tiny.cc/calltw to call in. Before we do that, Brady, I need to thank the wonderful, awesome Patreon supporters. Thank you to everyone who donates on the Truth Wanted Patreon. It's tiny.cc/PatreonTW if you want to support the show. and think that it's really cool. Every single week, we always give a shout out to one person from the Patreon, and we call them the patron of the week. So this week's patron of the week is Jason. Just Jason. I love it. Jason, thank you so much. And thank you for having an easy name to say, as opposed to a lot of people who donate on the Patreon. Not that I don't like any of them any less. It's just, I wish we had pronunciation guides sometimes. But anyway, Jason's an easy one. I know how to say that. Jason, thank you so much for donating. And of course, thank you to everyone who donates on the Patreon. You guys rock. Okay, so now that we have thanked our patron of the week, Brady, you ready to talk to some folks?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
I don't know why I just expected there to be a really cool like theme song. Like it would start with like a revving.
I wasn't sure if that was a delay or if you were just.
I was waiting for it. I wanted there to be like maybe you start with like an engine, like a motorcycle, and then like some rock, and then start taking the calls.
You know what? That is, I think something that would improve this show is just a morning Zoo Cruise soundboard that I can just rip off at any time. You know, I look, it's 2023. Like we have the technology, right? We should be able to implement
motorcycle sounds. Yeah,
motorcycle sounds, do the whole 9 yards. Okay, so this I think is this is gonna be a hot call, I think, but we should take it. Let's talk about it. We got Rodrick, who is calling in from Washington. Rodrick, you are live on Truth Wanted. What do you want to talk about?
How's it going, guys? I think we were going to talk about the difference between gender and sex.
Yeah, I see that. You said you wanted to talk about.
Do you believe there? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we believe that sex and gender are different? I'm just reading what the call screener had wrote. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah, I believe they're different.
Yeah, 100%. I totally believe they're different. I think that's been established for many years now. I think everybody who has studied this issue long enough can very definitively say that, yeah, sex and gender are super different things. So that's it. that's it. That? Why do I believe that? I think there's published scientists in fields like sociology and anthropology and biology who all agree on this idea that gender is a socially constructed idea, particularly in anthropology is when this idea is most developed. But you know, gender being this idea of social constructs, and sex also having implications of social constructs, more socially constructed than what some people initially think. Of course, related to biology, but is also culturally constructed in many senses. Gender, of course, being like completely constructive by human beings, I think is broadly the consensus of folks who studied the field. Yeah, and that's why I believe that. So, Brady, did you have a different reason or?
No, I think absolutely. When it comes to something that is a construct, then you go into more of a sociology, and things are descriptive; they're not prescriptive. So obviously, there are so many different gender constructs, especially whenever I was brought up in evangelicalism and came out and then started to actually interact with the actual gay community, not just the gay community that I was told exist, but actually started to meet the ones that do exist and understand like, oh, wow, there's so much different ways of expressing oneself. And yeah, this is absolutely a construct and relying on old dusty books to make a one-to-one comparison to gender and sexuality just isn't beneficial for humanity today.
Yeah. So there you go, Rodrick. What do you think?
All right. Well, I could use convincing with more specific examples of evidence, but setting that aside for a minute, what do you think is the implications of the idea, were it to be true or to be believed in, that gender and sex are different? What are the implications of that belief?
Well, I don't know. Implications. I mean, it means that people can. I don't think that gender is something that you have to just stick with for your whole life. I think gender is something you can freely choose, and I don't even think you have to experience dysmorphia in any particular way to like have a change in your gender expression. I think anybody can choose whatever kind of gender expression they want, and choose to call themselves with whatever pronouns or whatever, whatever dress, whatever speech, whatever way they want to present themselves, they're free to do it. So I don't think they have to be held back by whatever body parts they have or whatever their body looks to other people. Whatever makes them happy and whatever they're most comfortable with is what they should be free to do. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, freedom is number one on any good society. I agree with that. So so you've got now gender expression as well. What does that term mean?
Well, gender expression, right?
The way that you present and the clothing that you wear.
Yeah, I mean, so like a lot of society, particularly Western societies, have sort of hierarchical constructs of what your gender is supposed to be, right? And what your options are in your society, and even legal restrictions on what you're able to do. Less so now than in previous times, but it used to be that women couldn't vote, women couldn't own property, women couldn't do run for office. Like there was a lot of things that women couldn't do because they just weren't seen as equal to men. And so there's obviously been forces that equalize that. But on top of that, there's also been expressions as well that have been sort of restricted. So the most fundamental Christian places out there will tell you, yeah, women need to wear dresses. They need to be dressing in a, quote, feminine way. They need to be keepers of the house. They need to be raisers of children. So there's obviously limitations that come with those kinds of roles if that's all you're able to do. And that's not to say that any of those things are bad on their own, but if it's your only choice, it's not really fair, right? If you're just born differently. So yeah, having freedom of gender expression also means freedom to explore different roles in life and freedom to explore different perceptions of society and to be able to shift and morph and change. And it may mean that the way we see gender now is going to change 10 years from now from the common consensus. And in my opinion, that's totally fine. But I'm speaking a lot about it. Brady, what do you think?
I agree with everything you're saying, and I appreciate how articulate you are with it, because as a member of the queer community, as an LGBT gay man, like it is difficult. There were so many expectations that are given to us, and it's so binary. But the deal with gender expression is that I remember there was a quote from the writer of Harriet the Spy, and she said, "For as many people as there are alive, there's that many different types of way of living your life." That's not a great quote, but the idea is that we're all different. And I remember growing up in a place where I wasn't. What was inside was not what I was supposed to be doing. And as a kid who wanted to serve the Lord and wanted to do the best that I can within my belief system, I remember trying my hardest to do that. And now that I look back at it, it felt like a performance because it wasn't who I truly was. But then it was me doing the best with what I have.
Yeah.
Because I was told that everyone should fit into these certain boxes. Who I am truly is who I am now. And that's a gay man. I have a very feminine side. That means to me that I'm able to pursue sexually who I'm attracted to and have consent with and good communication with. That means I'm not held to old laws or old religious ideas that certain beliefs would make me go to hell, etc., whatever. But for me, I'm able to, within the confines of my ethics, were built on not harming others and having consent and communication, that I'm able to freely within those realms express myself and enjoy my experiences, whether they're sexual or not. Just even being around other queer people who have had to go through weird situations or have had to fit into normative restrictions that weren't really natural to who we are. Even us just talking about our experiences is affirming, because we're talking to somebody else who had to go through that same thing of being told who we were instead of being able to tell people who we are.
Yeah.
So like the whole point of gay pride and everything now is about expressing this is who we are. And it's not as a defense, but as a proud declaration, because we deserve just as much space in honor and respect as other people who may even have their only gender expressions communicated through religious text. But we're not trying to change other people, but they are trying to change us.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, identity is a lot socially negotiated, whether it's, not specifically what we're speaking of right now, but your status, your place of your hierarchy, and where you are and how people perceive you is something that you negotiate and is not always something that you're able to tell someone. It's a kind of an agreement.
Can I ask maybe why gender expression matters to you? Like other people's gender expression?
Oh, it's just kind of a hot topic right now, I suppose. And if we're getting back a little bit back on track, so we had gender expression, and then another term that I wanted to clarify was sex and how sex and gender expression are different.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I don't have a biology degree. I don't have an anthropology degree. I don't have a sociology degree. So anything that I talk about on this is purely a layman's opinion on the matter. But sex, as well as gender, has had changes over time in how we define it. It is for most people, for most periods of time, they've kind of simplified it. It's just been, okay, well, you have certain looks to your faces. You have these kinds of certain body parts. And so that means that you're either a man or a woman, and it's kind of fallen into this binary. But the more that we've kind of understood human physiology, the more that we've realized there's actually a more complex picture. So one of the most common examples that gets brought up in this conversation is, of course, the existence of intersex people. Intersex people being people who have body parts that could be androgynous in nature, body parts that don't neatly fall into binary categories of male or female. And they're actually more common than what most people would think. At least one organization, I can't recall, says that there's at least 1 in every 10,000 people that have intersex characteristics, and that could be a list of different criteria. And that doesn't necessarily mean that intersex people don't feel that they're one sex one way or the other, but it does kind of cast these shades of gray. Now, some people say, okay, well, we just have to look at people's chromosomes. Well, if you look at people's chromosomes, and remember what chromosomes are the genetic information that's coded within the DNA of every human being. Turns out that there's people with extra X chromosomes or extra Y chromosomes, but still present in the genders in particular ways, even though they may not even realize that their physiology can be different from other human beings. So the more that we study sex, the more that we realize, oh, there actually is kind of a spectrum to sex as well. It's not just gender that has this sort of spectrum. But
that's a good point.
The problem with it, of course, is that you can't really tell. You're not going to be able to tell by looking at me, knowing how many chromosomes I am, right? Unless you're taking DNA samples. It's not something that we can really experience in our daily life. So, yeah, well, sorry, I couldn't hear there. Say that again.
Because the incidence rate you said was really low.
Well, 1 in 10,000 is not that low. If you think about how common that actually is.
I mean, 1 in 10,000.
But also it doesn't matter. And kind of this obsession with, because I'm assuming political or other things have influenced you to saying it's a hot topic issue. It's not because you're experiencing anything. It's because you had to be told what's going on, what the debate sides are, and kind of your interest is as a third party. And really, there's something kind of dehumanizing about only talking about intersex people whenever we're having a debate. And there's something kind of dehumanizing about having this conversation about other people's gender expression, because it's not harming you or even affecting you of any way other than being told that you need to care about it because it's a hot. When I asked you, why would you care about this? It was just, well, because a lot of people are talking about it. But really, that's not how empathy works. That's not how sharing in a community works.
Yeah. But even just to finish what I wanted to say on that too, is that I brought up the example of intersex because I think it's the most accessible example. But
not you. Yeah.
Oh, of course. But it's one of many types of differences in physiology that we can see that get extremely complicated on the nuances. And the fact is, in everyday life, it just gets too complicated for us to have sexual categories for every single person that we meet. And to be honest, it's not even necessary. What really is necessary is what people want to call themselves. And that's really it. It's really what makes people the most comfortable and what's going to make them the most happy. That's all I really care about, unless we're addressing people's specific medical needs, right? If there's specific medical needs where their specific number of chromosomes or their specific sex characteristics are going to matter, they're going to help themselves for that, right? I trust that people are going to make that decisions for what they need for themselves. But even beyond that, it's not my business. It's whatever that they and their medical healthcare providers are going to take care of for themselves. That's for them to decide. It's not up for me. What is up for me, what I can control, is how I talk to people, how I make people feel comfortable in their daily world and in their environment, and how I can gain their respect as well as give them the respect that they deserve. And that includes calling people by the pronouns that they want to be called, identifying people by the gender that they'd like to be identified, because that's what I'd want for myself. And I'm saying this as a straight cis guy. I have no skin in the game for myself personally. It's just I have friends who have identities that are different from mine, and I like them to be happy. And that's really all there is to it,
Yeah, personal freedoms is really important. And then when we're talking about implications, to bring it back, I suppose one of the implications is that there would be trans children.
Yeah. Trans children exist.
So what is your stance on that? The medical treatment of trans children?
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. And again, I'm speaking as a layman. I don't have any professional credentials to talk about this topic. But if you ask me my opinion on it, there are a lot of misconceptions that happen on the treatment of trans children. There's a lot of people that think that there are, as soon as a kid identifies as trans, they're going to throw every single drug at them to do whatever they want with their bodies. And that's really not the case. It depends on the age of the child and where they're at in their development, what's the most appropriate treatment. But it usually 99% of the time is always going to start with therapy. It's always going to start with, again, those conversations with their provider. Different states have different requirements for exactly how long until they can receive any kinds of other like hormone treatments. But the thing is, we all get hormones put against our will anyway, right? When we're born. And as we grow up as human beings, there's always going to be hormones that grow in us. And sometimes that's not to our benefit. Sometimes we would like to have that change. I think body modification, it seems to be fine when I get my ear pierced or someone gets a tattoo or somebody gets plastic surgery. But we seem to, for some people, when we put other kinds of body modifications within us, that seems to be a taboo. And I think that's unnecessary and also directly harmful for people who do want to start making those transitions and those choices for themselves. Again, it's one of those things where it's none of my business. It's up to the professionals that understand the situation way better than I do. And it seems to be that the research so far, while limited, seems to be at least positive towards the idea that yes, early trans children receiving the kinds of treatments that they need at their age needs to be to their benefit and doesn't seem to be detrimental. So again, that's my opinion.
I don't think there's any research about the long-term mental health outcomes for.
You're right. The long-term outcomes are extremely limited at the moment. But that's something that we'll have to do. But short-term outcomes.
Your only entrance in caring is people who are trying to fight against it politically. So again, I want you to kind of reflect on yourself a little bit of why do you care about what other people are doing with their genitals. Like I'm trying to be polite and I understand that it's a hot button topic, but at the same time, you as a completely detached man calling and wanting to have a discussion about what kids are doing with their private parts is not because it's concerning to you. It's because you've been told to care about this and you've been told the talking points and you've been told why you should care. And it has to do with power and taking the power away from people being able to make decisions for themselves all over some third party non-existent care that doesn't make sense.
Say again?
Kids can't really make decisions for themselves at that age.
And you can't make it for them either. And it doesn't make any sense of why we're discussing it with you, because
Yeah,
you
I
have
agree.
absolutely no relationship to the situation. Like you're not an expert. You're just a guy who's been told to care about this because your political leaders have told you to care about it, because it has to do with them remaining in power. So I'm sorry, but why are we having this conversation with you, sir?
So,
Why do you care?
well, if it's children that might regret it later, like desistance was shown to reduce the rates of transition, and also 53% of mothers of boys with reported gender dysphoria meet the criteria for borderline personality disorder. So
Cite that for me,
a
please.
young trans boy is actually more likely than not to have a mother with borderline personality disorder, which is a serious condition. And that's something we need to look at when considering the decision that we're making for our policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I trust that the experts, I trust that the men and women whose careers are in actually treating trans children in the kind of care that they need, which, by the way, again, isn't always hormones. It's a lot of different things. I trust that the ones who are actually keeping up with the research and who are actually doing this know what they're talking about more than I do, and probably know the statistics more than I do. And I also think that somebody who has I also don't see why somebody whose parent is borderline personality disorder has anything to do with why they can't be trans. But you know,
it's because the rate of incidence is correlated.
Okay, well, let's say that's true. So what?
So if you being a white man is correlated with school shootings,
you're not taking the full weight of the situation into consideration with your treatment.
Right. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why?
Because as a psychologist, your job is to provide the best care considering
what. Okay, but Rodrick,
factors.
let's say you, as a psychologist, you're treating a young trans child and you find out that their mother or father has bipolar disorder. How are you going to change your treatment of care?
Well, then you would say that it's probably a lot less likely that that child would have experienced dysphoria if the mother had not.
Why on earth would you say that?
Well, why wouldn't?
Okay, you see how there's no reason?
How else would you explain?
Here's the deal, Rodrick. You can find every reason under the sun not to treat trans people as much as you want. The fact is, there are and will always be children who are trans. That's it. It's a fact of life. There are going to be children who experience dysphoria. And beyond that, there's not even going to be kids who experience dysphoria. There's just going to be kids who want to express themselves differently. And I think we should let them. I don't think that there's any reason not to. Are there complications that could happen because certain treatments have side effects that we want to mitigate?
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's why the people who are doing this every day are very aware of that and are trying to be in very delicate control of their situation. It's why pediatricians exist, because you have to take children differently than you can adults when you do treatments. I mean, it's the same principles at play here.
And my recommendation would be, if you do believe in freedom, stop being creepy. Stop being creepy about what you put your attention on and what you want to ask questions about. If you want to talk about freedom, then understand a democracy is sharing space with people that are different than you, and they don't need to have the same beliefs as you. And so the fact that you're trying to say that you believe in freedom, but also in the same breath want to ask questions about children's genitals is kind of creepy, man. Like and also, if we were to find out what your demographics were, and then Dan and I could probably take maybe a half a second and it come up with ways that we need to regulate you because your demographic has done bad things too, I bet. So what if we start policing how many guns you can have, or if you're allowed to go out in public, or if you're allowed to go to movie theaters because people who look like you might shoot up a movie theater or whatever. If you don't want that sort of treatment, then don't allow your right-wing politicians to influence you to be concerned with things that have absolutely no concern with you, and for you to keep asking questions and pushing on your agenda regarding kids' genitals because it's creepy. It might be time to move
asking questions so we can come to a general consensus regardless of our different opinion. And one final question I might ask is, what number of children who would have desisted without regret would you treat without... Okay, I'm trying to ask this. How many mistakes are allowed in this system? So if you treat 1 for 1,000 that don't regret it, is that an acceptable number?
I don't know what you mean by mistakes. I'm assuming you mean people who regret procedures that they got in earlier life.
So yeah, let's say 1 out of 5,000. Okay, so now you're going to shut it off, and then now your flip statistics are 4,999 versus 1. Rodrick, you need to move on.
Yeah, I would, I would talk to people. I wouldn't ask folks like me. I would ask folks who are, again, like in the business of actually giving trans kids share, and ask like what actually happens in a lot of these procedures. And you might be surprised what actually happens when we're talking about helping kids figure out their gender identity and what that means in terms of medical care. It's very complicated. There's a lot to it. It's more than just, oh, we're gonna give them puberty blockers. Oh, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. Like, yeah, that is part of it, but there's a lot of care that happens outside of just puberty blockers. It's a lot of stuff. So I would talk to people who are experts on it, but that's really is all the time we got. We've been on the call for about almost 17 minutes there, so we do have to move on. We got a lot of folks who want to talk to us. That was a long time spent on that call, but you know what? I don't regret it, because this is an important topic. It is a hot topic. It is a topic that has seen a lot of press, for good or bad. You know, that's obviously going to be differences of opinion between me and Rodrick. But you know, I don't know. Brady, what do you think?
I think just as a member of the LGBT community, I'm going to look at it a little different. And I guess it gets to a point where when our community is just constantly only cared about by certain political sides, whenever we're a debate and not as people, it gets to be a little dehumanizing that you always have to fight for your way to a table. And then all the conversation about you is whether or not you should still be at that table. And it just gets frustrating that when people, like the previous caller, was so influenced by political whatever, that their argument isn't because it matters to them, or because they've interacted with it, or they've got a friend whose kid is really struggling or having a hard time and they have empathy for them. It's that they are getting this false sense of empathy passed down to them by political leaders. And that sort of fake outrage, or that care, or that fake concern, or that directed weaponized concern, it's a weaponized concern. I think is the best way to defining it. It just gets to a point where when that's the only thing coming out of that political side, it gets old and it gets frustrating and a little dehumanizing at people's identities.
You're 100% right. And actually, I'm glad you said that, because I made the comment. Yes, it's a hot topic because I'm like filling as well. I'm trying to think of the words I'm saying. But when I say that, it's like, yeah, this is a topic that has become hot because you're right. It is concern trolling. It is a political tactic, right? It is insightful. It is trying to sort of weaponize people's identities to make people think about others in a dehumanizing way.
But he believes in his own freedom. He believes in freedom for him, but he's going to question it. You know what I mean? Like that sort of hypocrisy. It's like,
of course,
we're not right
here. I'm obviously we're no, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. We've got so many other callers we can get to. I think we've said enough on the matter, right? I think we're good.
Yes.
So let's keep it moving. Before we keep moving on, though, just so you're aware, we are accepting super chats and we will read them live on the air. So feel free to make us read the things that you've written, assuming that they are YouTube appropriate, by donating there. Of course, you can also donate by going to the Patreon, as I mentioned before, to get your name shouted out on the show. And there's one other way you can support the show. You can do that by becoming a member. If you get emojis in the chat, you will get emojis in the chat. Your name gets highlighted in the chat, and you'll be immune to the slow mode. And you can do that for as little as 99 cents per month. So all three of those things are ways you can support the show. And since we're a little bit later in the show, I'm going to give one or two extra announcements as well. One other thing is our merch. So this month's shirt, we're doing one shirt a month as a special shirt. And it says, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. And we got the cute little alien drawing there. And of course, we have our regular Truth Wanted swag. So check all that stuff out if you want to support the show in that way. And if you do buy something, please tag me on Twitter. I would love to see people what they do with their merch and stuff. It is very cool. And in a few weeks here, I think it's 2 more weeks, August 26th, we are doing the annual Bat Cruise here in Austin, Texas for the atheist community of Austin. Tickets have sold out, but you can still join the wait list in case there are cancellations. So if you want to do that, it's at tiny.cc/batcruise. And if you do get tickets, you can come to the atheist community of Austin shows the next day as well, and see all the live shows that are happening there. There's going to be Forrest Valkai, J-Mike, Jamie the Blind Limey, Johnny P. Angel, and a bunch of other folks are going to be there that whole weekend and on the boat as well. So go check everybody out. It's going to be a really fun event. I'm really bummed that I got to miss it this year, but it should be really, really cool. Okay, so I think I got all that stuff out of the way. So now we can finally move on to some more callers. We got a bunch of people who want to talk to us, Brady. I think this is a good one to talk about next. So let's talk to Art. We're talking to Art from Michigan. Art, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, sir. Actually, when I first called this number, I thought it was for Atheist Experience. Do you folks all use the same number for different shows?
We do use the same number across the shows, yes. But Atheist Experience is on Sunday, and now is Friday. So, yeah, you're on Truth Wanted.
Ah. Okay. Anyway, I was on my mind. I think about it a lot still. I'm an atheist, and I have been so since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And that's probably about the same time I quit believing in Santa Claus. I just, the magic didn't make any sense to me. And the magic of a God seemed like just more magic, only maybe more of it. And I just, I had trouble believing it. I have a sister that's a Baptist, though, and other people in the family that they told me, you don't believe, you're going to go right straight to hell. And that was always in the back of my mind, that what if I'm wrong type thing. And now, I absolutely don't believe in God. I don't see any reason for it. And it's just, I wonder how many other people out there really had to grow up into that very same situation. What if you're wrong? It's just a horrible thing to put a kid through. It's a horrible thing for anybody to go through.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think this argument of Pascal's wager, which is this thing of you might as well just believe, because if you don't, right, you go to hell. But if you do, you just get all the benefits of going to heaven. So why not just believe, right? It is so if you heard that from Scientologists, if Scientologists were well, if you just believe that we all came from aliens, and we're the actual ancestors of ghosts that lived on the planet, that was the result of a nuclear alien holocaust. You get all the benefits of hanging out with Xenon. So why not just believe? You would say, what? No, why would I believe any of that? But because we live in a Christian society, that's this is just the common culture. You might as well just pick up on it. Somehow that means that we have to give credence to ideas that are quite frankly just as silly. It is harmful to people who are growing up with that mindset. It was certainly harmful to me. I definitely felt like I was going to hell for a while. And now I don't. I really don't feel that way, fortunately. So
Pascal's wager is just kind of submission to the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a strange thing happen today. I was up here in Michigan. I was sitting on a bench out in front of a donut shop up here. It's tourist season up here. Everybody and their brother was up here. And I was listening to the Sam Harris having a debate with somebody else. And a fellow going into the donut shop with his family, he kind of heard that a little bit. And I turned it off when I went in there to grab my donut and coffee. And he started a conversation with me. Well, it sounds like you might be an atheist. I says, I am. And he says, well, what would make you not believe in God? I told him it's just, it's not that it's absolutely impossible for there to be a God. For me, it's just that there's not evidence enough to prove that there's a God. And this fellow, we talked for about 15 or 20 minutes, and his kids they weren't having eye contact or looking at us, but they were hearing every word that was being said. And I think that was really good. And we talked about, like, you know, if you beat your slave and your slaves don't die in a day or so, then it can't be held against you, that type of thing. And that was stuff that he had never heard before. And he was actually going to try to preach to me to get me to not be an atheist. And I think by the end of it, it's like, you know, he shook hands and stuff. He says, well, we've both got a lot to think about. And I says, well, I agree with you.
That's great, Art. That's great.
I think that is really cool.
The best thing, you know, like, obviously I'm here on the internet because I want to create content that people can like and share. And if I have a point of view or perspective that you think is worth sharing, I like it when people share that with others. But honestly, if you want to do like activism in real life, like if you want to not even just change people's minds, but just get people open to the idea of, hey, atheism is like a thing and you, like, you know, want to consider it. Like, having that conversation, what you had just there, is like the most important thing you can do, honestly.
So much of my upbringing had to do with equating belief with being good and disbelief with being bad. So just the fact that you were able to have that conversation with the dad and be able to both exchange ideas in those kids, it's like, oh, they just saw a third category that they probably aren't exposed to or told about that often. And that's like, oh, this guy doesn't believe, but he's good and can explain it. Ooh, now what do we do with that information? You know?
Right. Yeah. Because, like, what's the chances that he's ever going to find a show like ours? Right. Like, probably pretty minimal. But conversations with you on the street, that could happen. So
that's cool.
Very cool. Art, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I won't hold you guys. I'm going to sit here and listen to the rest of your show.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys thanks for taking my call. You guys have a great rest of your night.
Of course, Art. Thank you for calling in, and hopefully you'll find this show is even better than Atheist Experience.
That's right.
Did I say that? What? No, I'm just kidding. We're obviously a sister show, part of the network, so it's all good. But this is Truth Wanted. This is different. The vibe is different. Okay, so that's the most important part. Regardless, do appreciate you calling in. We have a bunch of other people that are still wanting to talk to us. So I'll make this next announcement real quick. If you want to email the show, it's truth@atheist-community.org, or you can reach out to the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org. There's also a website that's at, guess what, atheist-community.org. There is a Facebook group run by fans for fans. Check that out, tiny.cc/FBTWG. to interact with other fans on here. And last but not least, we have a super chat I have to read out. It's from Puck, former The Truth Wanted host. Puck, I say former, he just hasn't been on in a while and he's been doing some other stuff. Puck is always welcome to come back on the show if he wants to, but Puck, who gave $5, who said Betty bought butter, but the butter was bitter. So Betty bought better butter to make the bitter butter better. Just wanted to show love and support. I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of proud of myself. I like kind of nailed that.
That was good. That was really impressive.
Thank you.
That
Puck,
was
Puck, you're like I don't know what you are. You're like Loki. You're a trickster god, and you wanted to make me
very trickster.
This little trickstery thing, but I got you, Puck. I got you. I see you. So anyway, Puck, thanks so much for donating. Love you, bud. I hope you're doing good. So yeah, let's keep going with some of these conversations. So let's see. This is an off the cuff call. It's a topic I think it's a topic I've talked about before. I'm not sure if Brady has had experience talking about this, but let's see. We got Brandt, who's calling in from Wisconsin. Brandt, what do you want to talk to us about today?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you all if you think there is such thing as good biological parents, given that it's unnecessary to have a child to live a okay life, and all lives have some type of harms and suffering that's inevitably death, assuming death is a harm.
Yeah, so this is an interesting idea because this kind of relates to antinatalism. And I've talked about antinatalism on this show before. Antinatalism, in short, is sort of this idea that it's actually more moral not to have kids. There's a couple of different popular places where this conversation has showed up. There's even Reddit subreddits called, antinatalism, child-free subreddits, and this has been a growing view in recent years. And it's this idea that, look, climate change is on the horizon, but beyond that, life, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of unintended harm that could be happening when you bring a kid into this world. So isn't it more ethical to not have kids at all? Now, of course, there's implications to following that line of reasoning, but it's a really interesting argument because I think if you take it very seriously, there's very serious ramifications if the sort of anti-natalist assumptions are true, in that there is more suffering than good that comes out of life. Folks like David Benatar has written about this, and then we talked about was it not Thomas Pynchon, guy who wrote the book we were talking about last week on the show. I've talked about this. So yeah, there's some literature about it, and of course there's a lot of people in popular media right now that are saying like, oh, we should be having more kids, we should be having as many kids as we want, so there's a lot of debate on this topic. Personally, I think there's interesting merits to an anti-natalist worldview, but I'm also talking to Brady here, who has a kid. So Brady, what are your thoughts on this? Have you talked about this topic much?
I was really influenced by the Duggars when we had a kid. We were going to wait for a while, but then we're like, the Lord wants us to multiply. So we had our kid. But no, I think
I wish you were serious about that. Were you actually
influenced? Yeah. It's really? It's like a fun joke between us, because like the church we came from, they're the type that are just like, hey, pump as many kids as you can, because people are questioning the faith and this religion is going to die if you don't have as many kids as possible to indoctrinate. Yeah. So I definitely think, like, here's my thing. I think it is unethical to choose to have -1 or more kids, because that means you probably like proactively murdered one of them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I definitely think that there is a cap. I think there is like hey, this is too many and you're not really being responsible or thinking about what if everyone did that. That's like a phrase that I grew up with. But wherever we go to the point of saying, well, all parents, this, everyone that making decisions that like literally stopping billions and billions and billions and billions years of biological inertia because of like a philosophy that should be applied across the board. It just isn't, to me, it doesn't work that way. That's not how humanity works.
Gotcha. Brandt, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'd like to ask, I'm an ethicist, so I basically accept all the problems that people say is wrong with antinatalism. I'm just kind of like, those aren't problems to me. But, so pro-mortalism, animal suffering, all that stuff, I accept it all. But when it comes down to it, I'd like to ask, I guess, you two, if you think there actually is like some sort of right and wrong in the universe. Like, is there actions that we ought not to do? Like, is there something that's bad or good? Because if there is, I feel like
I that's a different, very, very, very different question. So
able to progress the conversation.
Well, to not to get too deep in the weeds and throwing every single philosophical term out there. But my moral philosophy has definitely changed throughout the years. Probably one of the biggest things that I deconstructed from my Christianity, because I used to just have a very simple idea of, well, whatever God says is right. God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. It was really just that. And then you realize, oh wait, this kind of morality thing is more complicated. And actually, what the hell is morality? And does it even exist? Right. And so now I'm in a phase of my life when talking about it, I'm what's called an anti-realist when it comes to morality. In other words, I don't really believe or really subscribe to concepts of objective morality. When I talk about morality, I really think I'm talking about subjective constructs that are usually based on human preferences or preferences to principles like avoidance of suffering. For example, I'm also, of course, attempt to be vegan, try to be it as much as I can. And so I do care about animal suffering, right? That usually doesn't have anything to do with humans. When we talk about this, we're talking about other sentient beings, but I'm aware that they have a capacity for suffering. I want to try to avoid that suffering as much as possible. So that's why I make the decisions and choose the products that I do. So in that sense, you can talk about morality in constructive ways. Just because you think that morality is a social construct doesn't mean that it's not quote unquote real, right? Most people agree money is a social construct. That doesn't mean it doesn't have real impact, real consequences, real ramifications, because we treat it as real, and that's important enough for me. That's all that really matters to me, is that we do treat it as real. So is morality real in an ultimate objective sense? Not really. If humans didn't exist, or if conscious beings didn't exist that didn't care about themselves either way, I'm not sure if morality would even be a coherent concept. But there are beings that exist that care, and so that's kind of how I view it.
I think
so
it requires
trying to be short about it, but
you have. I think it requires experience to have value. It requires experience to have value for morality to occur. So I agree with that aspect of it, but it seems odd to me to say that like when something's in pain, it's just like simply social construct, like it's just a humans. Like if humans didn't exist, like an animal trapped under a tree and like distress seems like it would still be problematic regardless if another being is around to care about it. You know what I mean?
The thing is, I don't disagree. I think the fact that a being is in pain, the subjective experience of it being in pain is an objective fact. I don't disregard that at all. When we say morality is subjective, we're saying the fact that we should care about that. That's the difference, right? So I do think we should care first and foremost, and I think most people who take an anti-realist stance also think we should care, because we have preferences, because we have values, right? And that's really all we can get to at the end of the day. Otherwise, it's just a big circle. I really think that all these conversations about morality and stuff all just comes to because I have a preference, because I have this value. I don't think that we can get around that.
So if you were interacting with a pure psychopath, how would you be able to explain to them how something's bad under your view? Like
that's the problem.
You'd be kind of trapped in this thing, like. Because in my view, I can be like, hey, you do not want a nail in your eye. I don't want a nail in your eye. And the reason that it's bad to have a nail in your eye is because pain is bad to be experienced. Like, objectively, for a subjective experience, it's bad.
Yeah.
And your pain is equal to my pain, regardless, because just as your $5 is equal to my $5, your pain is equal to my pain, regardless of if you're experiencing it or if I'm experiencing it. So I have, like, a reason for why, like... So for you, it seems to be just kind of like, well, if you think it's bad, I think it's bad, then it's like we're in agreement and kumbaya. But if it's a psychopath or someone who's like completely like from like Islam, and they're just like, yeah, I like tossing gay people off roofs. It's what we do. It makes me feel good, and it's what Allah wants. Then it's just like you can't get through to them. It's just like, what do you do in your view?
Yeah, so let me address this, and I'll answer this quickly, and I want to give Brady a chance to also chime in, because I don't want to take up the whole time. But yeah, so when we're talking about folks who experience psychopathy, and again, just to reiterate, I have no professional medical experience or whatever, right? We are talking about folks who, in general, when they have a diagnosis of psychopathy, tend to struggle with empathy, right? Tend to struggle with valuing other people and their feelings and their desires. And so that, I think, the fact that morality is the way that it is exactly why it is so hard to talk to people who experience psychopathy. Like, that is literally why we have so much trouble with having folks who do break these kinds of social norms and legally enforced norms as well, literal laws, because they don't have that same sense of value. I think our society works because most of us do have that sense of value, and we operate within that. But when you're outside of that construct, if you lack that construct, you just can't do it. So to me, it's kind of like asking, well, how are you going to convince a cat that it's going to experience right and wrong? and not to dehumanize people who experience psychopathy. But it's like, look, an animal is going to experience or have the wants that it wants. You can only do so much to influence that. There's not really much we can do. Human beings are the same way. We're just animals that want what we want. We have these things called society that we work around, but I mean, that's really the only tool or instrument that we can use to enforce people outside of wanting it.
I don't think it requires free will to. I don't think you need free will. You can be completely programmed. I think all people are completely programmed. Billions of years of evolution, you know. But like, just as like I can't like say a cat is morally responsible for something. I can say that the pain it causes in the universe when it kills a mouse is bad. I don't believe death is bad, but I can say the pain of it having his throat crushed or whatever is a bad thing, and I think that's objectively true. That like all beings on Earth stem from common ancestor, and because of that, they experience suffering and pain as a native experience that ought to be avoided.
I want Brady to chime in. Also, Brady was making faces while I was talking, so I think he disagrees.
Well, I'm just offended by the one-to-one comparison to cats to psychopaths. I'm a cat fan, and I just don't know if.
That's why I want to make the comparison. let me again make. You know, on a live show, you sometimes come up with stuff on the fly, and it's not great. It's more just, you have to work with where you're at. You got to work with where people are at, and people who experience reality in different ways are going to have that experience. You just have to work with them where they're at, and that's why you treat people with different mental capacities differently. That's it. That's all I was trying to make with that. It was a clumsy analogy, to be fair, so sorry about that. But
as a gay man who has dated other gay men, I kind of get wanting to throw some of them off of a bridge. Just to go back to your previous example.
So now Brady is balancing out my controversial statement with his own controversial statement, which I appreciate. Brady. Really,
you're welcome.
That's good. I appreciate that.
No, actually, honestly, Brent, I really do like the way that you kind of described how your morality works, because I think that for me, coming out of fundamentalism, it was just book says this, God's preferences matter. But then as I got out of that, I realized, oh, my system had to like hit a reset and had to have a new starting point. And my new starting point was similar to what you were saying, was a very like dynamic way of empathy of, I don't like this pain, I don't want to give it to others. And then it kind of like sprung off of that and kept going. So like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I appreciate that sort of line of thinking, because whenever we have just, oh, do I care about what somebody else is going through, or do I just care what somebody else handed down to me? Not to pick on Roderick for a previous caller from before, but I guess I am a little bit. It's kind of that same concept of he doesn't really care about these kids unless he was prompted. And so a lot of people's morality is that same way, is they really wouldn't care about gay people unless they were prompted by something. It's not about reducing harm. It's not about treating others the way you want to be treated. It's just, oh, this is a stance that I was told to take, so now I'm going to run with it. But you start from a different place, and I think that that's really respectful. I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go, Brandt. Any final comments before we let you go here?
Yeah, I guess I don't really have much, but I guess anybody that's interested in what I had to say, just check out stophavingkids.org website and Atheists.
All right. Well, Brandt, thanks so much for calling in and talking about that. Yeah, again.
But it doesn't mean you should kill your children if you have them.
No, that's not the antinatalist position. It's like
I know, I'm kidding.
Also, I was trying to be clear with because like I do get asked about my morality, like, okay, what do you do about people who experience psychopathy? And it's like, okay, well, it's like, how can you?
It's not my job.
There's that. It's not my job, but also like the fact that we just have our values the way that we have them is exactly why psychopathy is a thing. I don't know. I don't know if I get more clear than that. It's like, you can't just treat people like robots that you can just program to do what you want. They're just going to do what they want because objective morality is not a thing.
But then the other side is like the law is to then make it within your benefits to follow it. Yeah. So like creating consequences like that are external is helpful, but the law is not morality, right?
No, the law is not morality. We in general create the law to benefit as many human beings as possible. And that's just simply not something that someone who
Not in
experiences
Missouri.
psychopathy would care about. But maybe not in Missouri. Actually, maybe not in a lot of American states now. To be fair, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know, but it's really easy to get in the weeds with morality conversations. So it is what it is. We're gonna get to some more calls here. I'm not entirely sure about this call, but I'm gonna try to take it anyway. We're talking to Chris, who's calling in from Pennsylvania. Chris, what did you want to talk about?
Hey guys, how are you? I'd like to talk about actually the shirts. Actually, yeah, good. The shirts actually that you guys had on were interesting, and I wanted to actually talk about them. I just thought that was very interesting the way you guys had those shirts, and it looked to me like it was, pretty much a, like a replica of, a satanic pentagram there, and with the top of the shirt saying "Hail Science." I'm getting that correct, right? The screen was small.
Oh, you're talking about when we were talking about our merch, the store. There is a shirt in our merch store that does say "Hail Science." I think I think it's in the merch store for that. But I don't think that was on screen earlier. Okay. Yeah. What's up with that?
What's up?
Well, I would just like to address the point between the obvious, kind of connection between the devil, Satan, the evil one, and science, and how he has fooled, especially the atheists of this world, that not only does he not exist, but of course that God does not exist. And I think that's a very important point, I think, too, as well. And it seems as though science is kind of course, moving towards, erasing God, and of course trying to prove that God does not exist. And he's fooled a lot of people. I'd say the devil. It's been pretty remarkable to kind of watch this whole thing. Once you kind of learn a few things regarding science, and you kind of get an idea for what exactly, he's been up to. And it's been very interesting to watch, especially the younger, the Zoomer generation, really kind of fall in love with science and kind of like to, almost worship it in a way where you kind of see them, and there's, these, and I want to be as nice as I can. I kind of want to, but you see them kind of watching a lot of, a lot of these science programs and stuff, and of course, and they're.
You know what they've been watching a lot of? You know what they've been watching a lot of? They've been watching a lot of documentaries about spiritual abuse and how people use religion to influence kids and how they use religion to abuse people. But I've never seen a documentary about religion actually doing the supernatural things that it claims that it can. That's weird how you guys are being influenced, don't you think, Chris?
No, I don't, because I actually was a science believer just like you. I kind of went down that for many years. I didn't think there was a God. I was like I just I didn't say I was an atheist, but I would say that I was somebody that just didn't really pay attention. I was like, yeah, there's a God, whatever, that's fine. I'm going to go about my life and do what I want. And now I can kind of look back and see just how terrible of an idea that is. And you could pretty much see God in many things. And the fact that we're able to have this conversation, I think, is even proof of God here too, as well, is that you can discern, you can actually have your own discernment, whether there is a God or not. That in itself proves God, because I can't, you're not going to see I don't think deer do that. I don't think dogs do that. I don't think cats do that. Cats don't think about their death. Cats don't think about God. They're just, they're just animals, and they act on impulses. And I don't want to say like atheists, but there is some, animalistic impulses that atheists pretty much, kind of do whatever they want. And as if there is no God. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why you think Christians don't act on their impulses, because they definitely do, because they're also animals. But yeah, Chris, the shirt is a joke. Like, the shirt is just fun, because there's a lot of people that say, oh, people who believe in science are Satanists. So the shirt says "Hail Science" instead of "Hail Satan." That's it. It's just a joke. Like, it's not that we literally worship science, right? That is, in fact, the exact stereotype in which we are trying to make fun of in having a shirt like that. So the fact that you responded the way that you did is really I don't know.
Hole in one.
Kind of missing the point, right? It's kind of like, well, we're doing this because there
No.
are folks literally like yourself who have this point of view. So if anything, you're
So-
validating the shirts in a way. It's not
So
us
let me
who's
ask you a
validating it.
question
It
then.
really is you.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Did you get vaccinated with the COVID vaccine?
Oh man. Yes, I certainly did, Chris. I certainly did. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And how long before the vaccine was available, when they made it available, did you go and get the vaccine? How many days, weeks?
I got it as
Months?
soon as it was available in my area. I don't remember exactly when at this point.
Oh.
But I really am
Okay.
worried where this is going, because if we're going to talk about vaccine
Well,
stuff,
you should be, I think.
you know, well, I'm not worried for the things you're worried about. I'm worried because YouTube doesn't like it when we talk about this topic, because it gets very angry at us for even if whether we're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, YouTube has a tendency to get those videos taken down and stuff. So it's not really a topic that I would go into right now. But if you have other issues with science we could talk about, I'm much more game for that, honestly.
Right.
So
if I can make, I won't use that word again, but I just want to kind of point out the worship of the priestess. The priestess is meeting the gentleman that was on TV with his last name started with an F and ended with a Chi, he goes and tells a lot of people, and the scientists all tell you that the TV tells you to run out and go grab that thing as quick as you can.
Chris, you guys I didn't get the vaccine because Anthony Fauci told me to get it. I could give less of a fuck about Anthony Fauci. Anthony Fauci could say vile and dumb stuff, and that doesn't have anything.
Can I ask you a question, Dan? Dan, can I ask you a question?
Finish my point real quick.
Ask me a question, Brady.
Can I finish my point real quick? Can I finish my point real quick?
Your point is I worship Anthony Fauci in the same way that I would Jesus Christ, and that's just not true. I don't know why you would make that analogy.
Scientism.
Do we have a precedent?
Scientism that you worship. It's scientism that you worship. It's not a god. It's man here on earth is who you worship. When they tell you to run through, wear a mask, you'll run and wear a mask. If they tell you got to go shopping, hopping on one leg.
I want to hear what Brady has to say. I'm going to quickly mute you here, Chris. Brady, what do you got? I want to hear you.
Dan, do we have a precedent of humanity benefiting from vaxes?
Oh, we absolutely do. Brady.
Do we have a precedent of gods showing up?
No, I don't think so.
Do we have a precedent of holy books being written by men saying that they represent God, and then that God never showing up, but then people saying, oh, it's faith in God, but really it actually means faith in all the men who wrote, edited, decided what was going to be in the Bible, that whole the Council of Short Story competition that Constantine did that got us the Bible. Do we have a precedent of that happening?
You're 100%
yeah.
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. No, but I think, Brady, you hit the nail on the head, right? Science has this cool thing called the scientific method, which we can replicate stuff and have an idea that something is going to work because it's worked before. And so that's why I trust, quote unquote, in science. More so, I trust the institutions that give us scientific information and that they're doing their jobs and giving that information accurately to make decisions based on expert conclusions. So yeah, I'm one human being. I don't have expertise in biology. I don't have expertise in environmental science. I don't have expertise in a million other things, but there's a lot of people who spend their lives doing these things. And at the end of the day, I'm going to trust that consensus, a socially constructed consensus, yes, but a consensus nonetheless, based on folks who are actually doing that shit 9 to 5. Because I'm not smart enough or passionate enough or dedicated enough to do that.
They couldn't be bought and paid for. There's no way that money could influence your decision at all. There's no way that could happen.
But every single pastor that you have is bought and paid for, and they're making money off of saying that there's God.
Yeah,
they're saying that we just believe things that we're told, but literally believing what you're told is what faith is, Chris. So whenever you're saying that we're wrong, we're putting faith in science, but you're believing in a book that doesn't have a precedent, you're doing even more faith. And so laughing at us for not believing in something that requires faith to believe in is kind of a red flag that maybe we're not going to be able to see to eye because you've been taught not to look.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not. We won't see eye to eye. I watch the channel every now and then for whatever reason. It's come on my feed, and I've made some comments. And but yeah, no, I appreciate your time here in the air. I would take up as much time as you'd allow. I don't know. Again, we're not going to see eye to eye, but I think it's just kind of interesting the way you guys constantly make fun of people that believe in God, and here you are, without any real proof, whether the V word or whether the jab was safe and effective, and here you are, and you were just running, go take it. There was no, vaccines. And I hate to use that word.
What's interesting is that God, if he is real, not only either allowed or provided the means by which to kill people with the COVID virus. God didn't give us the vaccine to stop it, and God didn't do shit. So, if anything, if the scientists, even if they're wrong, even if they didn't come to the right conclusions that these vaccines are working, God, at least they fucking tried, because God sure didn't do shit when millions of fucking people died all over the world.
He gave you you're wrong though. You're wrong because he told you basically.
Really? I'm sorry.
Show us.
And then hold on, because you're interrupting. You're interrupting.
Back to life, Chris. Is that what happened? I must have missed that in the news when Jesus Christ came back on Earth and resurrected everybody from the COVID virus. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I believe that
he didn't come back because
God
didn't do shit. Right? Let's be real. God didn't do shit. Anyway, I dropped you, Chris, because I'm kind of done with this conversation. But
because all you do is believe what you're told.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Look, I'm fine with talking to folks who are interested in what we have to think. And Chris, to your credit, you asked us some questions, and I think you started to listen. But when you start talking while we're talking, that's how I know you're not listening. So it doesn't even matter at that point. Are scientists paid off for corporate interests? Fuck yeah, they are. Holy shit. Yeah, it happens all the time. But the thing is, science, this idea,
they can show for it.
Yeah. There's a lot of institutions that make up science. Lots of different organizations, some of which are federally funded, some of which are privately funded, some of which are given explicit corporate biases.
100% of the pastors are paid off. Even though the source material says they're supposed to sell everything that they own so they can preach it, but that doesn't happen. They are being paid. And even the Bible admits that. It says, how would they told unless somebody is sent? In other words, none of these things are objective and nobody can witness them. So somebody's got to tell them the story of what to believe, and believing what you are told is faith. And to pass it on to us and saying we're doing that for science, but we're able to show the research, we're able to show the graphs, we're able to show the, what is the word I'm looking for? Like the measurement of it. And the differences that things make. Science is not this big set of rules. It's a way of seeing what needs to be changed, what needs more research, what needs more information. What can we lean into, not what can we push back and say, oh, forget all of this, we need to get rid of it, which kind of goes back to what Rodrick was saying. Let's say that 1 out of 500 people or 5,000 say that the gender care that they got as kids wasn't good, so let's shut it all off. Well, now you flipped it to 4,999 are not getting the help that they want for that one, and it shouldn't be at this all or nothing expense. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. The thing is, too, as well, science has been, and we use this word science when really we're talking about a lot of different ideas, but scientific consensus, right, has been wrong about a lot of stuff, like a lot. We could talk all day about experts in their field being absolutely 100% wrong about the things they're talking about. But the fact is, right, there's still a method in place that we've actually figured out how those people are wrong, and it's still science, right? It's not different. It's not like, oh, we're going to go to religion now to figure out how these people are wrong. No, we're still just figuring out better and better methods of figuring out how the world works, and tools in which we can understand it. And all of that is done through lots of hard work by people who probably aren't paid the best to do it, but are really passionate about the stuff they do, and who certainly give a shit and know exclusively more what they're talking about more than most people most of the time. I mean, that's just generally how it works. We can talk about all the times they're wrong, but there's a lot of times where they're more right than wrong. We tend to just bring out the points where we think that they're wrong because that's what sticks out. But how much science we've actually relied on to get other stuff done is really quite incredible. So, you know, just talking about vaccines and maybe one vaccine or some other vaccine having these adverse side effects, which I'm assuming is where you were getting to. You know, that's it's not even coming close to the actual net benefits that have come with vaccinations, which has still been proven to be the case. But anyway, hopefully that's going to be okay for YouTube. But regardless, we talked about it anyway, so it's already out there. Brady, we're getting towards the tail end of tonight's show. We're getting out of time, but
we both got sassy at callers. I got sassy at a caller. You got sassy.
And low-key, you brought it out in me. Like you kind of
yes. I think you know what? I was on Sydney Davis Jr. show yesterday, and she said the same thing. And I'm starting to think there's just something about me that makes atheists sassy.
I think you kind of you're an influencer. You know, you're an invoker of something. But hey, we are at the end of the show here. Brady, thanks so much for being
my pleasure. Thank you.
Today. We are going to be doing an after show, so if you want to keep talking to us for just about 20-30 more minutes, we're going to be on the Discord answering some of your questions. So go join the fan run Discord server, tiny.cc/ACD Discord, and we're going to be there in just a little bit right after the show. And
I'll be there.
Brady's going to be there. And if you aren't going to be able to make it, Brady, where can people find you at?
The Life After podcast. I do a YouTube thing, but that's not like it's not like the main thing. But you can find me on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And also.
So one other thing I got to point out, talking about some of the other stuff here, somebody who mentioned the Atheist Experience earlier. If you like the Atheist Experience, we actually do have a 24-hour live stream that's happening that shows old and new episodes of Atheist Experience. And there's like constantly people in the chat that you should check out. We also have a Talk Heathen 24-hour stream that's also available. Links to that are in the description and on screen. So check that out. Wanted to mention that before we wrap things up. And one more thing as well, just to remind folks, the prompt this week is, what is something that is overpriced, but people pay for it anyway? Please give your comments below. And we're going to read the top 3 answers next week.
Children.
Yeah, you know, that's a good one. Brady's on a roll now. I hope you keep this up.
Evangelical moms.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Before we wrap things up, I have to thank the wonderful, fantastic, amazing, stupendous crew that help make this show happen every week. There's the crew cam this week. And like, there's the cats as well. Cats also were a vital part of this show's process. We rely on their expertise in a lot of our decision making. So thank you to the cats that help make the show happen. And thank you, viewers at home, for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this. One more super chat before we go from Twinkle Toes, who gave £5 and said, "Great show," smiley face. So thank you for that, Twinkle Toes. And thank you again to everybody who supports the show. You guys rock. I am Objectively Dan. This has been another episode of Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth. And I'll see you next time.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.